This may come as a surprise to most, but demons are not inherently bad. At least, not daemons. In fact, everyone is said to have one, and if you neglect it, life may at times become harsh and unfulfilling. The concept of the daemon was originally connected with the individual's creativity and the discovery of one's life purpose. That is, until religion came along and demonized it. In ancient Greece and ancient Rome, people didn't necessarily believe that creativity came from human beings. They believed that creativity was this divine attendant spirit that came to us from some distant and unknowable source for distant and unknowable reasons. The Greeks famously called these divine attendant spirits daemons. Socrates famously believed that he had a daemon who spoke wisdom to him in times of need. The Romans had the same idea, but they called that sort of disembodied creative spirit a genius. They believed that a genius was this sort of magical divine entity who was believed to live in the walls of an artist's studio and who would occasionally come out and invisibly assist the artist with their work, ultimately shaping the outcome of that work. It was quite brilliant, actually, like a psychological construct to protect you from the results of your art, since everyone knew that this is just how things worked. So the ancient artist was protected from certain things, like, for instance, too much narcissism. If your work was brilliant, you couldn't just take all the credit. Everybody knew that you had this disembodied genius who had helped you. On the other hand, if your work bombed, it wasn't entirely your fault. Everyone knew that your genius was just having an off day. That's vaguely how people thought about creativity in the West for millennia. That is, until the Renaissance came and everything changed. We had this big idea, for whatever reason, which was to put the human being at the center of the universe. And so now it wasn't some divine fairy who made the art, it was the artist. In modern times, despite more people than ever claiming to be artists and creators, it seems as if genuine artistry is becoming increasingly rare. Maybe it's manifesting in alternative ways, or maybe it's declining as a result of AI, but for whatever the reason, Picasso once said that inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. And whether the advent of AI is good or bad, it's difficult to avoid the impulse towards laziness when artificial intelligence can cook up your drafts in 5 minutes or less. There's a quote by James Hillman that really gets to the crux of what this discussion's about. He says, "Sooner or later, something seems to call us onto a particular path. You may remember this something as a sudden calling in childhood when an urge out of nowhere, a fascination, a particular turn of events, struck like a divine annunciation. This is what I must do. This is what I must have. This is who I am." The discovery of a life purpose is a crucial ingredient in a life well lived. With a why to define our existence, it is far easier to remain strong amidst turbulence of life and to move forward despite the blows of fate that frequently cross our paths. "The man without purpose is like a ship without a rudder," wrote Thomas Carlyle. Discovering our purpose is unquestionably vital in the production of a life worth living, for the simple reason that when we discover the grand mission, to which we feel that inner calling, which is often a hallmark of a life purpose, we free ourselves from the agony of spending the majority of our lives in a job we do not care for, accommodating ourselves to obligations and objectives which were never ours to begin with. "What man in the world," asks Goethe, "would not find his situation intolerable if he chooses a craft, an art, indeed any form of life, without experiencing an inner calling? Whoever is born with a talent or to a talent must surely find in that the most pleasing of occupations. Everything on this earth has its difficult sides. Only some inner drive, pleasure, love can help us overcome obstacles, prepare a path, and lift us out of the narrow circle in which others tread out their anguished, miserable existences. Some of us are lucky in that we stumble upon a purpose at a young age. A fascination grabs hold of a youthful mind, and favorable circumstances provide it with means and safety to pursue that interest until a path is made clear. For the majority, however, purpose does not arrive in such a fortuitous manner. Instead, we must go searching for it on our own without protection or assistance, and often it goes unfound. Fortunately, we don't need to travel blindly. For those of us who must endeavor alone, we may find guidance and inspiration in the study of those whom psychologist James Hillman calls exemplars of calling. These are renowned men and women of history whose achievement consists of having found and fully developed themselves to the purpose they were uniquely suited for, despite seemingly barren lots and countless instances where things easily could have gone the other way. If they were victorious, we could be also. Extraordinary people often display their calling brilliantly, since it arises so naturally and pronounced. They cling to it without question. These individuals become shining examples to the world by their clarity of transmission and their resolution to keep the received instruction. Curiously, many reports of these so-called exemplars of calling, as Hillman puts it, converge on one point. They often claim that what guided them towards their purpose was not rational deliberation, but an impulse of sudden inspiration, which was felt to have come from beyond the threshold of ordinary waking consciousness. This force has been called by many names, but the most notable with regards to our discussion is the daemon. Socrates is reported to have been inhabited by a daemon, which in crucial moments warned him what not to do. Goethe credits his own daemon for the poetic and scientific feats of his life. Interestingly, the poet Rudyard Kipling wrote, "When your daemon is in charge, do not try to think consciously. Drift, wait, and obey." Carl Jung stated bluntly that there was a daemon in me, and in the end, its presence proved decisive. In an 1871 letter written to an acquaintance, Nietzsche confessed, "I just don't seem to have a compass to tell me what I'm destined for, and yet, in looking back, everything seems to fit so well that it's as if a guiding spirit has been showing me the way." Given the ubiquitousness of these reports, it is no surprise that the word vocation is derived from the Old French vocation, which generally means a spiritual calling, summons, or urging towards a specific activity. As Jung explained, who has vocation hears the voice of the inner man. He is called, and so it is the legendary belief that he possesses a private demon who counsels him and whose mandates he must execute. You don't have to believe in guiding spirits to make sense of this phenomenon. The daemon can be conceptualized in logical terms. We can think of it as a subconscious psychological complex underlying awareness, a functional cluster of ideas, emotions, and associations which exist beyond usual perception and which sometimes interact with the conscious mind through seemingly irrational means. It can appear to guide us in the direction of our purpose through intuitions, fantasies, visions, sudden urges, dreams, and more notably, synchronicities in the physical world. Jung seems to have considered the daemon wholly existing in the unconscious mind. However, I am of the opinion that the subconscious mind is the only place from which insights can be mediated from the unconscious to the conscious. I would further argue that the daemon is anyway best comprehended in the context of the subconscious, since, by definition, the unconscious mind cannot be directly perceived. On the contrary, our daemons are known to engage with us from time to time, and we them. Consider the structure of a pyramid in three parts. The capstone represents the pinnacle conscious mind. A level just below that, much wider of course, represents the subconscious, And the lowest level, which accounts for an overwhelming majority of the pyramid's mass, that's the unconscious. Your daemon very well may live inside of the unconscious, as Jung suggests, but it also traverses the subconscious, from where it occasionally slips into proximity of the conscious, delivering insight. That familiar messenger is what we commonly allude to in our conception of daemon, something that makes contact with us from the realm of our subconscious, bringing with it signs and symbols of a deeper unknown. For the daemon surprises, writes Hillman. It crosses my intentions with its interventions, sometimes with a little twinge of hesitation, sometimes with a quick crunch on someone or something. These surprises feel small and irrational. You can brush them aside, yet they also convey a sense of importance, which can make you say afterward, fate